You're traveling through the unknown, a journey beyond the corners of reality, where the shadows whisper and the chill runs deep. Welcome to the dimension where your deepest fears are given form. This is the Midnight Mystery.
Welcome to the Midnight Mystery. Today's episode is called I Survived the Town That Feeds on Fear. In each episode, we delve into the shadowed corners of our existence, bringing you tales of the eerie, the uncanny, and the downright terrifying. From the realms of the supernatural to the depths of the human psyche, no stone is left unturned, no dark secret left hidden. As the clock once again draws near midnight, prepare to embark on another adventure into the uncanny, the eerie, the horrifying, the Midnight Mystery.
The dreary sky loomed ominously over the small, obscure town as I, Dr. Alan Carter, made my entry. Whispers of a horrifying illness had slipped through the winds, finding their way to the ears of the scientific community. And here I was, a vessel of skepticism and logic, ready to unearth the truth behind the terrifying tales. The town seemed to breathe despair. A gloomy aura hung in the air, and the shadows seemed darker, more sinister. Tales of the townspeople's deepest fears taking monstrous forms had intrigued me, but standing there, a strange feeling curled in my stomach, an inexplicable sense of foreboding. I met Martha, a local, whose eyes were shadowed with a terror that words failed to capture. "It's like living in a relentless nightmare, Dr. Carter," she whispered, her voice trembling. "We see them, monstrosities, creatures born from the darkest corners of our minds. They haunt our streets, our homes, our lives." I nodded, scribbling down notes, maintaining the armor of my scientific rationality. "Can you describe these entities, Martha?" I asked, curiosity veiling my slight unease. Her eyes darted around nervously before settling back on mine. "They're different for everyone, shadows of our fears. My daughter, she's terrified of spiders. Last night, a gargantuan spider with eyes that gleamed with malice lurked in her room. It disappeared, but the terror, it lingered, Dr. Carter." The conversations were eerily similar, tales woven with threads of horror and the supernatural. My scientific mind wrestled with the stories, seeking logic in the illogical, reason in the unreasoned. Armed with a mind trained to debunk the mystifying veils of superstition, I walked the desolate streets. The once buzzing life seemed to have been sucked out, leaving behind an unsettling quietude. Shadows seemed to dance ominously, and the buildings, though inanimate, whispered tales of horror. In a cafe I met John, a sturdy man whose sturdy demeanor seemed rattled. "Doctor," he said, his voice a mixture of frustration and fear. "I've always been scared of drowning. 2 nights ago I woke up, and my room was an ocean, the water choking the life out of me. It felt real, too real." His words painted a vivid picture, and despite my resistance, a shiver traveled down my spine. "It's a psychological phenomenon," I reassured him, and perhaps myself. "The mind can play powerful tricks." Night fell, and the town transformed. The darkness seemed alive, throbbing with an unsaid terror. The winds carried whispers of the grotesque, and shadows hid monstrous secrets. Despite the fortress of my skepticism, doubts began to infiltrate. Shadows of unbelief started lurking in the corners of my rational mind. Night had consumed the town, and I found myself navigating the eerie silence of its desolate streets. A heavy fog of dread lingered, and the houses stood like haunted relics of a forgotten time. I was there, a witness to the unfolding tapestry of terror that had ensnared the town. In the dim glow of a flickering street lamp, I encountered Mrs. Johnson, a frail woman with eyes that told tales of unspeakable horrors. "Dr. Carter," she greeted, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's not safe out here. The shadows, they come alive." I tried to offer a comforting smile, clinging to the threads of rationality. "Can you tell me more, Mrs. Johnson?" I asked, readying myself to document the tales of the inexplicable. "I saw my dead husband last night," she confessed, tears glistening in her worn eyes. "He stood at the foot of my bed, cold and lifeless, accusing me with his empty eyes." The words hung heavily in the cold night air, and despite my scientific bearings, I felt an unsettling disturbance in the atmosphere. "It's a manifestation of your grief and fears, Mrs. Johnson," I explained, attempting to cloak the supernatural in a garment of psychology. I continued my observations, the darkness seemingly whispering the haunted melodies of terror. Doors were shut tight, and through curtained windows, flickers of candlelight told stories of people caged by fear. I met Daniel, a young man with a tough exterior that seemed to crumble under the weight of the town's mysterious ailment. "Dr. Carter," he said, his voice shaking, "I can't escape it. Walls close in on me. The room shrinks and I can't breathe. It's real, and it's here." The town had become a theater of the surreal, a place where shadows danced with fears, and reality intertwined with nightmarish fantasies. I documented, observed, and tried to weave threads of logic through the tapestry of terror. But the darkness seemed resistant to the light of understanding. Something ominous lurked in the hidden corners, and the mystery seemed deeper than the tales that echoed through the haunted silence. The days melted into nights as I found myself ensnared deeper into the town's unfathomable mystery. My pursuit of understanding led me through a labyrinth of terror, where each turn revealed faces of fear, stories that echoed through the chilling silence, and shadows that seemed to breathe the town's haunted past. One somber evening, as the last rays of the sun surrendered to the engulfing darkness, I found myself in the company of Mrs. Evans, a middle-aged woman who wore the torment of her experiences in her tired eyes. "Dr. Carter," she began, her voice faltering, "it's like the devil's playground. My son sees wolves, ferocious, bloodthirsty creatures that hunt him through the night." As I listened and documented the tales that seemed to flow like a river of horror, a cold shiver traced my spine. My mind, a fortress of rational thought, found itself on the battleground, where the shadows of doubt began launching their unsettling attacks. Another night, Mr. Thompson, a robust man with a voice that usually resonates with strength, shared his nightly torment. "The walls bleed, Dr. Carter," he said, his voice a mere echo of its former authority. "I see faces twisted and tortured, in every corner of my house. They scream, their voices etching terror into every moment of darkness." Each story, a petal in the blooming flower of terror, added to the unsettling atmosphere that seemed to have veiled the town. Despite the darkness that seemed to grow with every tale, I held on to my scientific approach, seeking the light of logic in the heart of the overwhelming shadows. The fateful encounter with the town's mysterious affliction happened on a night where the moon hid behind the clouds, and the stars seemed to have drowned in the ocean of cosmic fear. A feeling of unease began to grow within me. Shadows whispering the tunes of terror began lurking in the peripheries of my vision. That night, my room became a stage where the hidden fears of my mind began to enact their horrifying performances. Figures, grotesque and nightmarish, emerged from the shadows, their presence a suffocating blanket of terror. My mind, once an empire of rationality, found itself amidst a storm, where the winds of doubt and the rains of fear waged war against the foundations of my beliefs. "Dr. Carter," whispered a voice, its tones threaded with the essence of my deepest fears. The room seemed to close in on me, the shadows thickening, forming entities that my mind recognized as the horrifying creations of its darkest chambers. I found myself navigating through horrifying scenarios, each moment a challenge, a test of my sanity. The world around me became a mirror, reflecting the grotesque images conceived in the womb of my fears. My scientific beliefs, the armor that I wore with pride, began to show cracks, the swords of the manifested terrors leaving their merciless marks. Days became a waiting room for the nights of terror. Conversations with the town's residents became journeys through landscapes painted with the horrifying colors of their fears and terrors. "They are real, Dr. Carter," said Emily, a young girl with eyes that had witnessed the realms of horror. "They come from the shadows, stealing the peace of our minds, leaving behind the echoing screams of our tormented souls." Night after night, the darkness presented scenes that challenged the boundaries of my understanding. The entities, born from the fears that hid in the depths of my mind, became frequent visitors, their presences an unending nightmare that questioned the essence of my rational beliefs. In the heart of the overwhelming darkness, I found myself at crossroads, where each path seemed to lead deeper into the realms of the incomprehensible. The town, with its shadows that seemed to bleed terror and its air that seemed thick with the essence of the horrifying, became a book, each page a tale of fear, each word a heartbeat of terror. And I, a reader, found myself lost in its chapters, where reality seemed a distant memory, and the present a relentless wave of nightmarish encounters. Darkness had become a merciless artist, painting my world with strokes of terror and brushes of the grotesque. Sleep, once a refuge, had transformed into a battleground where monstrous entities clawed at the edges of my sanity. The decision to escape, to flee from the oppressive grip of this tormenting chaos, began to form like a desperate scream in the silence of my anguished mind. One shuddering evening, as the remnants of light reluctantly gave way to the triumphant darkness, I sat with George, a resident whose spirit seemed shattered by the ceaseless battle against his manifested fears. "Dr. Carter," he murmured, his voice echoing the weariness of a lost soul. "There's no escape from this consuming terror. It's a prison, with walls forged from our darkest fears." I listened, feeling the weight of his words, feeling the suffocating shadows drawing tighter around the realm of rationality. "George," I whispered, "I'm considering leaving this torment behind, seeking solace away from this nightmare." But doubt, a cruel jailer, kept the bars of this mental prison firmly locked. The night became a theater of the macabre, where the play of shadows and fears unfolded with ruthless intensity. My room, once a sanctuary of rest, became a realm where horrifying visions paraded through the darkness, where each corner reverberated with the whispers of the unseen. The decision to leave battled against the chains that seemed to bind my spirit to this heart-wrenching mystery. Conversations filled with echoing despair and words woven with hopelessness became the unsettling soundtrack of my days. "Dr. Carter," said Lisa, a woman whose eyes reflected the flames of this relentless torment. "The darkness has claws that dig deep into our souls, holding us captive in this symphony of horrors." I nodded, feeling the truth in her words, feeling the icy fingers of the terrifying unknown clutching at the fabric of my resolve. The entities, monstrous creations birthed from the womb of fear, seemed to tighten their grip, their haunting presences becoming the architects of an inescapable maze of terror. Each moment became a step through this overpowering labyrinth, each decision shadowed by the towering walls of doubt and fear. The town, once a vessel of life's ordinary melodies, now resounded with tunes of horror, each note etching the saga of an unrelenting nightmare into the vast sky of uncertainties. And in this tumultuous symphony, my spirit found itself lost, searching for escape routes in the oppressive darkness of despair. I'd spent countless days and even more sleepless nights trying to find the scientific backbone to the horror engulfing the town. But as days turned into a relentless blur of terror, a chilling revelation began to crystallize in my mind, sending shockwaves through the very core of my understanding. One evening, as the sun's feeble light waned, casting a melancholy hue across the skies, I sat with Martha, a town elder known for her wisdom and tales of old. "Dr. Carter," she began, her voice aged like fine wine. "This town has always been different. It's like it has a life of its own, feeding off our emotions, thriving on our fears." Her words, though puzzling, resonated with a disturbing clarity. Could it be that the town itself was an insidious entity, drawing sustenance from the terror it inspired in its inhabitants? Martha continued, her eyes distant as if peering into the fog of time. "Generations have come and gone, but the town, it remains unchanged, ever hungry, feasting on our nightmares." The pieces of the puzzle began fitting together, forming a picture more terrifying than any entity or shadow I had encountered. The town, with its hauntingly desolate streets and ever-present aura of dread, was not just a stage for the manifestations. It was the orchestrator, the puppeteer pulling the strings of horror that ensnared every soul within its boundaries. I felt a profound betrayal. The logic and reason I clung to, the tools of science I had leaned on for comfort, crumbled like a house of cards in the face of this overwhelming revelation. The foundation of my beliefs was shaken, and I was left to grapple with a reality that defied all comprehension. Desperation took hold, and the thought of escaping this living nightmare consumed me. I packed hastily, hoping to slip away under the cloak of night. But as I ventured into the labyrinth of streets, the town seemed to shift and morph, trapping me in its inescapable maze. Every turn led me back into its heart, every path a cruel reminder of my entrapment. Days turned to weeks, and my attempts to leave became a ritualistic dance of despair. The monstrous entities, my own darkest fears made flesh, became constant companions. Their grotesque forms and haunting visages, a reflection of the terrors that lurked within me, mocked my futile efforts to escape. One particularly tormenting night, I found myself on the outskirts of town, standing at the edge where the fog-dense forest met the first houses. Benjamin, a town local whose spirit had long been crushed by the relentless horrors, approached me, his eyes mirroring my own anguish. "Trying to leave, Dr. Carter?" he murmured, a sad smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "The town won't let you. It never does. Resigned to my fate, the realization weighed heavily on my shoulders. I was now a permanent resident of this horror-infested town. The scientific explanations that had once been my shield had betrayed me, leaving me vulnerable to the whims of this ever-hungry entity. Time lost its meaning. I roamed the streets, both hunter and hunted, seeking answers, yet forever tormented by the monstrous embodiments of my deepest fears. Each face I encountered bore the same marks of torment, souls bound to this place, prisoners of an insatiable darkness. In the end, it wasn't just the fears of the townspeople that the town fed upon. It was hope, the last glimmers of which had been mercilessly snuffed out. The town and I became one, forever intertwined in a dance of despair and terror, a silent symphony of screams echoing through the timeless void of our shared nightmare.
I hope you enjoyed our episode. I'd like to extend a heartfelt thanks to you, our brave listeners. Your presence in this shared journey into the unknown is what fuels our stories. Your fascination is our motivation. Did this episode send chills down your spine? Then leave your comments, your thoughts and theories, your own midnight mysteries. Your feedback is the beacon that guides us through the uncharted territories of our stories. And if you haven't already, remember to subscribe to our channel. By joining the Midnight Mystery family, you won't miss out on a single chilling tale. As a subscriber, you'll be the first to know when a new episode lurks around the corner, ready to pull you back into the shadowy depths of the unknown. This is the Midnight Mystery signing off, leaving you with a simple reminder. When the clock strikes 12, fear the silence, for that's when our tales come to life. Good night, Midnight listeners. And remember, not all who wander into the dark are lost.